Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So who's gonna start?
Hi, my name is Travis Armstrong.
Rosa Alfas.
Raquel Hernandez.
Hi, my name's Diana.
Carlos Alvarez.
And we're going to talk about generational poverty. So what is generational poverty? In order for a family to experience generational poverty, that family had to have been experienced poverty for only 2 generations. It's not to be confused with situational poverty, in which specific changes like divorce or loss of job cause one's income to decrease. There are 3 factors associated with generational poverty. First factor is hopelessness. People generally relate poverty to not having financial resources to meet basic needs. But these families usually experience other types of poverty, like educational poverty, parental poverty, and spiritual poverty. The combination of these factors can cause a sense of hopelessness. This is a large contributing factor to the cycle of generational poverty, because without hope that things can get better, it's difficult to muster up the motivation needed to break the cycle. Another factor is surviving versus planning. So people experiencing generational poverty are focused on surviving rather than planning ahead. They spend their time thinking about the health of the family, what they're going to eat that day, or where they're going to be able to sleep that night. Planning for the future generally doesn't happen, and that's partly due to the sense of hopelessness experience. There's no planning to be done if there's no hope for the future. And one final factor of generational poverty is values and patterns. The values and patterns of families experiencing generational poverty differ from the values and patterns of middle-class families. Families in middle class can spend time and effort valuing education, their careers and future careers, and being productive citizens in society. However, families experiencing generational poverty don't have that luxury. Instead of valuing things like career paths and societal productivity, they're forced to place a value on survival and more short-term situations.
What is racial group prone to poverty? About 1/3 or half of children who are poor during their childhood will be poor during an adulthood. In the chart next to us, it shows that women, Black, Hispanics, and children or a disabled person is more likely to live in poverty. Poverty among white Americans is about 10%, compared to twice as much as Blacks and Hispanics. Black and Hispanics continue to be overrepresented in population in poverty. We're gonna watch a short video.
For years, every day was a struggle for Carletta Johnson.
Just being a single parent with no help, that was really, really hard.
Even harder with no car, little family support, and only a part-time job, which also meant for her no health care. She was relying on government subsidized housing and food stamps to feed her 3 children. As for her paycheck,
it was no more than
$600
every 2 weeks.
That's every 2 weeks for you and your children.
Right.
And some days,
I was sitting in the parking lot, I was just crying. And I'm like, okay, get yourself together.
but it was all she knew, raised by a single mother herself, forced to grow up fast to help care for her 5 siblings. More than 1,000 miles away in Phoenix, Arizona, Jonia Coleman has a similar story.
I grew up in a single parent household with my mom, and I had 7 other siblings. My mom was on government assistance for a while to be able to help feed us.
This is generational poverty.
People are often born into poverty, and it's been poverty that their mother, their grandmother, etc., has experienced.
For a family of four, it's defined as making less than $26,000 a year. More than 38 million Americans live in poverty. For Black Americans, it's 1 in every 5, higher than Latinos, Asian Americans, and more than double the rate of white Americans. And it spills into all aspects of life. More chronic health issues, higher rates of divorce, and abuse or neglect. Climbing out can seem nearly impossible. It often requires a new job or a degree, much harder with fewer resources like transportation and childcare. That was Jonia's reality until 2 years ago, thanks to Live and Learn, where she gained support, new mentors, and a new mindset.
They're trying to help me with my credit, all type of things that they offered to me to get myself back in order.
Having somebody that makes you feel safe, having a cheerleader, having an advocate, having somebody that is by your side no matter what happens.
Back in Atlanta, Carletta is also defying the odds, recently moving into her own home for the very first time. She got her certification and became a teacher, now with big hopes for her own children.
My dreams for them is for them to grow up and just live a life. Don't have to worry about things that I had to worry about as a child.
Hoping she is the one to finally break the cycle. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
Hey, NBC News fans.
For years,
There are also links to education that comes with poverty. Education is one of the best ways to get out of poverty, but children who are born in poor families are likely to fall behind in school. They don't have the opportunity to attend preschools because it's out of their it's out of their possibilities since they're born in a poor family. And the lack of resources, of course. Without school readiness, it's extremely hard for children to catch up with the rest of their peers. Therefore, they are less likely to be successful academically. Poverty is a risk factor for graduating high school. Children who were not ready for school and that did not attend to preschool fall behind, and this is what affects gradually their self-esteem as well, since they feel like they're not doing good at school and they lose the hope and they don't graduate. Due to the impacts on cognitive development and the lack of resources mainly, on the side we have a graph bar that says the people who graduated from high school or that don't have a high school diploma, some college degree, and a bachelor's degree and higher. The blue bar task is people who are experiencing poverty or that grew up in poverty, and the yellow ones are like in comparison to the rest of the population.
Living in a poor neighborhood puts that neighborhood's residents at a large disadvantage. Children perform at a lower academic level when raised in a poor neighborhood, and subsequently they tend to earn less money when they become adults. Adults experience worse health conditions and less happiness. When families stay in the same poor neighborhood for generations, they generally experience the same disadvantages in each generation. Those families that stay in the neighborhoods are more likely to continue the cycle of generational poverty. Redlining. Redlining is defined as the practice of lending discrimination based on the locations of both the property and the individual attempting to purchase that property. Non-white families were denied loans for homes in certain neighborhoods by bank lenders. Redlining was put in place in the 1930s in order to lower lender risk, but what it actually did was basically institutionalize the racist bias in America, racial bias in America. The term is now used to describe any racial bias in real estate, such as the higher interest rates that non-white people are still being offered when applying for loans. Today, non-white Americans generally have lower valued homes, if they have homes, and this translates to smaller individual net worths, which makes it more difficult to generate generational wealth, which can keep families in generational poverty.
Effects of poverty. Children have a higher probability in living a disadvantaged neighborhood that could possibly have risk factors such as delinquency, substance abuse, become a gang member, malnutrition, health problems, mental health problems. The parents can also suffer from stress due to the poverty, struggling, making ends meet, and are worried more often financially than building a relationship with their children. Effects of poverty in children. Children's life could be affected in their environment, such as home not having their own room, the house is too crowded and not have all the necessary things, school not having the necessary supplies due to financial problems, and friendships not having what their friends have, like toys, video games, and electronics like iPads, computers, or phones.
Homelessness and people that are born into homelessness. The environment that they grow up in most likely is not very positive and nurturing, and it could be in bad conditions and not help them fully develop both their mental and their physical body. And of these children, majority of them are Hispanic and Black. In the 2020 census, 11.6 million children were born into poverty or have gone through poverty in the US. And around this time was COVID-19, and COVID-19 has led more children and families into poverty, which is 4 out of 10 kids families face financial struggles. In a quote by campaignforchildren.org, it states, a 2021 study by the Child Care Services Association found that 1.3 million infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, which is 1 in 18 children under the age of 6, have experienced homelessness every year.
So what are the groups that have broken the cycle of poverty? Research shows that there is a possibility of breaking the chain of poverty if individuals follow a 3-step formula, which is called success sequence. The first step would be to complete at least a high school education. Obviously pursuing a college degree or a bachelor's degree, it's on each individual's possibilities. Getting a full-time job and getting married before having children. This is a key factor for overcoming poverty because children are very expensive. And if they are barely trying to get away from poverty, it is a bad idea to have a child because all of those expenses that were for your personal future is going to get dragged by, well, it's gonna sound bad, but by the child, because child are expensive. According to the study, 97% of the people who were able to follow these steps broke the cycle of poverty. Education is key to breaking the cycle of poverty because there are more chances of getting a better paying job.
That's the end of our presentation, and this is the discussion question. How can we break generational poverty? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.